do you know me? Jesus answered and said to him, before Philip called you, when you were under the fig tree, I saw you. Nathanael answered and said to him, Rabbi, you are the Son of God. You are the King of Israel. And Jesus answered and said to him, because I said to you, I saw you under a fig tree, you believe. You will see greater things than these. And he said to him, most assuredly I say to you, hereafter you shall have seen heaven open and the angels of God ascend and declared upon descending upon the Son of Man. Footnotes. Verse 35. These new disciples use several names for Jesus. Lamb of God in chapter 1, verse 36. Rabbi 1:38. Messiah 1:41. Son of God 1:49. And King of Israel 1:49. As they got to know Jesus, their appreciation for him grew. The more time they spent with him, knowing Christ, the more we will understand and appreciate who he is. We may be drawn to him for his teachings, but we will come to know him as the Son of God. Although these disciples made this verbally shift in a few days, they would not fully understand Jesus until 3 years later. Acts 2. What they so easily professed had to be worked out and experienced. We may find that the word of faith comes easy, but deep appreciation for Christ's coming by living by faith. Footnote on 37. One of the two disciples was Andrew, chapter 1, verse 40. The other was probably John, the writer of this book. Why did these disciples leave John the Baptist? Because that was what John wanted them to do. He was pointing the way to Jesus, the one John had prepared them to follow. These were Jesus' first disciples, along with Simon Peter, chapter 1, verse 42, and Nathanael, chapter 1, verse 45. Footnote on 38. When the two disciples began to follow he asked them, what do you seek? Following Christ is not enough. We must follow him for the right reason. To follow Christ for our own purposes would be asking Christ to follow us, to align with us and support our advance of our cause, not his. We must examine our motives for following him. Are you seeking his glory or your own? Verse 40 through 42, footnote. Andrew accepted John the Baptist's testimony about Jesus and immediately went to tell his brother Simon about him. There was no question in Andrew's mind that Jesus was the Messiah. Not only did he tell his brother, but he also was eager to introduce others to Jesus. See 6, 8, and 9 in chapter 12, verse 22. Many people in our lives have heard you talk about your relationship. How many people in your life has heard you talk about your relationship with Jesus? Continuing on with 42. Jesus saw not only who Simon was, but who he would become. That is why he gave him the new name, Cephas. It's Aramaic. It's Arabic. Peter in Greek, the name means a rock. Peter is not presented as rock solid throughout the gospel. but he becomes a solid rock in the days of the early church, as we learn in the book of Acts. By giving Simon the new name, Jesus introduced a change in a character. It says for more, see Simon's profile. Verse 46, Nazareth was despised by Jews because a Roman army garrison was located there. Some have speculated that a loft attitude or poor reputation in morals and religion in that part of the people of Nazareth led to Nathanael's harsh comment. Nathanael's hometown was Canaan, about 4 miles from Nazareth. Continuing on 46. When Nathanael heard that the Messiah was from Nazareth, he was surprised. Philip responded, "Come and see." Fortunately for Nathanael, he went to meet Jesus and became a disciple. If he had stuck to his prejudice without investigating further, he would have missed the Messiah. Don't let people's stereotypes about Christ cause them to miss his power and love. Invite them to come and see who Jesus really is. Footnotes on 47 through 49. Jesus knew about Nathanael before the two of them met. Jesus also knows what we are really like. An honest person will feel comfortable with the thought that Jesus knows or him or her through and through. A dishonest person will feel uncomfortable. You can pretend to be something you're not. God knows the real you and wants you to follow him. Just think about that. God knows who you are. And if you ain't true, he's going to get you. Footnote on verse 51. This is referring to Jacob's dream recorded in Genesis 28:12. As a unique God-man, Jesus would be the ladder between heaven and earth. Jesus is not saying that this world be a physical experience, that they would see the ladder with their eyes through the transfiguration, but they would have spiritual insight into Jesus' true nature and purpose for coming. He came to seek and save the lost. That's what he came for. Chapter 2, Jesus turns water into wine. On the third day, there was a wedding in Cana of Galilee. The mother of Jesus was there. Now both Jesus and his disciples were invited to the wedding. And when they ran out of wine, the mother of Jesus said to him, "They have no wine." Jesus said to her, "Woman, what does your concern have to do with me? My hour has not yet come." His mother said to the servants, whatever he says to you, do it." Now there was a set of 6 water pots of stone, according to the manner of purification of Jews, containing 20 or 30 gallons apiece. Jesus said to them, "Fill the water pots with water." And they filled them to the brim. And he said to them, "Draw some out now, and take it to the master of the feast." And they took it. And the master of the feast had tasted the water that was made wine, and did not know where it came from. But the servant who had drawn the water knew. The master of the feast called the bridegroom, and he said to him, "Every man at the beginning sets out the good wine, and when the guests have well drunk, then the inferior. But you kept the good wine till now." This beginnings of the signs Jesus did in Cana of Galilee and manifested his glory, and his disciples believed in him. After this, he went to Capernaum, he, his mother, his brothers, his disciples, and they did not stay there many days. Footnotes on chapter 2, verse 1 and 2. Jesus was on a mission to save the world, the greatest mission in the history of mankind. Yet he took time to attend a wedding, took part in the festivities. We may be tempted to think we should not take time out of our own important work for social occasion, but maybe these social occasions are part of our mission. Jesus valued these wedding festivities because they involve people, and Jesus came to be with people. Our mission can often be accomplished in joyous times of celebration with others. Bring balance into your life by bringing Jesus into times of pleasure as well as times of work. Going on with 1 in chapter 2, verse 1 through 3. Wedding in the day, Jesus' day, was a week-long festival. Banquets would be prepared for many guests, and the week was spent celebrating the new life of the married couple. Often the whole town was invited, and everybody would come. It was considered an insult to refuse an invitation to the wedding. To accommodate many people, careful planning was needed. It turned out wine was more than it. To run out of wine was more embarrassing than to break a strong unwritten law of hospitality. Jesus was about to respond to the heartfelt needs. On verse 4, Mary was probably not asking Jesus to do a miracle. She was simply hoping that her son would help solve this major problem and find some wine. Tradition says that Joseph, Mary's husband, was dead. So she probably was used to asking for her son's help in certain situations. Jesus answered Mary in a difficult to understand. But maybe this was the point. Although Mary did not understand what Jesus was going to do, she trusted him to do what was right. Those who believe in Jesus but run into situations they cannot understand must continue to trust that he will work in the best way. On verse 5, Mary submitted to Jesus' way of doing things. She recognized that Jesus was more than a human son. He was the Son of God. When we bring our problems to Christ, we may think we know how he should take care of them, but he may have a completely different plan. Like Mary, we should submit and allow him to deal with the problem as he sees best. On verse 6, the morning. The 6 stone water pots were normally used for ceremonial washing. When full, the pots would hold 20 to 30 gallons. According to Jewish ceremonial, people became symbolic unclean or unclean by touching objects of everyday life. Before eating, the Jews would pour water over their hands to cleanse themselves of any bad influence associated with what they had touched. On verse 10, people look everywhere but to God for excitement and meaning. For some reason, they expect God to be dull and lifeless. Just as the wine Jesus made was the best, so his life is better than life on our own. Why wait for everything else to run out before trying God? Why save the best for last? On verse 11. When the disciples saw Jesus' miracle, they believed. The miracle showed his power over nature and revealed the way that he would go about his ministry, helping others, speaking with authority, and being in personal touch with people. Miracles are not merely superhuman events, but events that demonstrate God's power. Almost every miracle Jesus did was to renewal of fallen creature, restoring sight, making the lame to walk, even restoring life to the dead. Believe in Christ, not because of his Superman, because he is Superman, but because he is the God who continues in his creation. Even those who are poor, weak, crippled, orphan, blind, deaf, or some other desperate needs, Verse 12. Capernaum became Jesus' home base during his ministry in Galilee. Located on a major trade route, it was an important city in the region with Roman garrison and customs station. At Capernaum, Matthew was called to be a disciple. Matthew 9:9. The city was also the home of several other disciples. Matthew 4:13 through 19. High-ranking government official in 446. It had to be at least one major synagogue. Although Jesus made this city his basis of operation in Galilee, he condemned it because of the people's unbelief. Matthew 11:23 and Luke 10:15. And we're going to stop there today, and we will start with verse 13. Next week, the message and ministry of Jesus, the Son of God. It goes from chapter 2, verse 13 through chapter 12, verse 50. So, anybody got any